Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Patreon podcast. This week, I wanted to talk about the idea that there's always going to be more ideas out there. I have been on a little bit of a vacation the past couple days, and because of that, I've been streaming every day. Partially because I'm working on the Let the World Forget Us album, and I want to just jam out a bunch of ideas, and then I can spend the rest of the month refining those ideas and turning them into complete songs. But partially, I also wanted to try out kind of what it would be like if I was quote unquote retired. Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to get up every morning, do a couple things like stretch and meditate and journal and that stuff. And then I want to stream for like 1 or 2 hours every day just to like kind of get that creative process moving. And kind of what I've learned is even though I don't really necessarily have any ideas going into the stream, I always end up with 1 or 2 ideas that I kind of like. And this is no surprise. Like I've been doing the 2-hour track challenge forever, but doing it even on a more regular basis and just sitting down. I mean, most of my streams are like an hour and a half, and then I'm just kind of like, okay, guys, I gotta step away for a bit. But even though like I'm not finishing the songs, I'm at least hammering out some interesting ideas and some like things that I can work on evolving and pushing forward further in the future. And I think that that's really important. And I know like way back when I started the 2-hour track challenge, I was doing 2 of those streams a week, and I definitely did get burnt out. And there are definitely times in the prior years when like the November album challenge was going on, and I was also doing 2-hour track challenge streams, and I was juggling all this stuff. And yes, you know, I got burned out and I got pushed a little too far for that. But as long as you're not burning yourself out, like there's always going to be ideas there. And I think that it's really a good thing to keep in mind. Because there are definitely a lot of times where I sit there before a stream and I'm just like, I have nothing. There is nothing that I could do today that would sound good. And I definitely had that problem this morning. And, you know, after an hour and a half, we had a pretty competent, you know, like half a song. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, then I can work on that later. And, yeah, I'm really trying hard not to burn myself out doing this, but I'm also keeping it very light because I'm not trying to finish the songs. I'm just trying to start them. And like, I'm not worried about running out of ideas. I'm just worried about overextending myself. So it's kind of a fine line and maybe kind of a minute distinction, but like, it's not about finding the ideas. The ideas will find you. As long as you're putting in the time to sit down and just kind of jam for a little bit. But if you push yourself too hard, like that door kind of closes a little bit, if that makes sense. So it's finding that line for you, and it's different for everybody, but it's finding that line for you where you can, kind of stay consistent and try to do something every day or every week or whatever works for you, but also not overburden yourself with the idea that you have to do something, that you have to like hammer out an idea and it has to be this level of quality. It reminds me of when I did the Patreon kind of the album sprint thing, back in, I think June, where I like wrote 14 mini songs over the course of a weekend. And like my goal was to make something. It didn't really matter what it was. My goal was just to put notes on the page and move on. And some of those songs were good. Like heck, one of them ended up as the song Undercovers in the Hey album. And I love that song. But you know, most of them were just kind of notes on a page, and that's okay. My buddy Shaka always says that sometimes you have to just get the fail out. And I think that that's a really good example of that, where, you know, you just sprint and you do as much as you can, but just like sprinting physically, like with running, you have to take a break afterwards. You can't sprint and then just run a marathon unless you've trained for it. And I think that it's important to keep that very much in mind when you're doing something like this, because if you I mean, really the analogy there just means like you're either winded or you burn yourself out creatively. Like, that's how it works. But it's just important to remain cognizant of that and to stay focused on your mental health and your creative inertia with this kind of stuff, because if you push yourself too hard, you're going to end up being useful to nobody. And, I've talked about that a lot in the past, and, that's nothing really new, but I just want to reiterate that it's just important to not worry about whether or not the ideas are going to come, because the ideas always come. They might not be the ones that you want. With this album in specific, like I really want to make ambient stuff. And right now I'm making like down tempo and chill out and stuff, which is still nice and fun and great. But it's also like, I really want to do more ambient, like meditative music. And I'm kind of struggling there, but stuff is happening, and that's the important part. Like if I really was unhappy with these songs, like I could put them together in a B-side and I could release that, a couple months after this one came out, and it would be fine. But that's just how it goes. I think I kind of exhausted this topic, but really I just wanted to instill like hope with people, where it's just like, sometimes it sucks to not have any ideas, but they will come. And that's the important part. And I just wanted to reinforce that you're never going to run out of ideas, just like I'm never going to run out of podcast ideas. Either I'll eventually like start rehashing things that I did 4 years ago, and, I have a new perspective on them now, and I think that that's valuable. So like even if your ideas are remixes of stuff that you've done a long time ago, that's perfectly fine. Hell, like almost all of my music is the same chord progression, which is fine. Like that's like my style. Like that's kind of signature to me now, and that's just how it is. So it's not so much that I have no ideas. It's just that I still have this huge design space within this, very narrow corridor, and I can still do stuff with that. So I feel that there's just no reason to fret about not having ideas, because there'll always be more ideas. Even in my darker times where I'm just like, oh, I'm so depressed. Like I don't want to stream today. I just have no ideas. Like there are times where I listen to music. I'm just like, man, how does anybody put a song together? Like, how does music work? And it's just like, I just feel overwhelmed with the idea of doing anything. And, sometimes those streams aren't great. But I still end with something at the end of it. Even if it's not something I'm terribly happy with, it's just the idea that I sat down and I let something come to me. And I think that that's really valuable. So I think I've reiterated the same idea over and over for the last 8 minutes. So I'm going to get going, but thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter. I genuinely do appreciate it. I hope you have a fantastic Friday and a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you in the next one. Be remarkable.